Hello, ladies. Happy Wednesday. All right. Coach Courtney here. I wanted to come on here and chat with you a little bit about how you can start to manage your carbs and start to lower your carb intake so that way you can reach your body composition goals. So I hear this all the time, ladies. I'm following a low calorie diet and I'm not seeing the results, or I'm following a low calorie diet, but I still have this unwanted belly fat. So here's what I want to say about that. So first of all, guys, yes, you do need a calorie deficit in order to lose belly fat. But here's the other thing, guys, is that it's not just the numbers. It's not just about the calories. It's not just the quantity, ladies. It's all about the quality as well, okay? Because here's the thing. If we're eating a lot of carbohydrates, then we more than likely have elevated insulin levels, and that can lead to things like increased cravings and increased belly fat. And not only that, ladies, is if we're not doing things like getting enough protein, then we're not going to have the metabolically active muscle tissue that we want in order to have an optimal running metabolism. So that's why it's so important to do things like macro counting. It's not just about calories in, calories out, which, yeah, that is going to play a role. But if we're eating a lot of processed foods, if we're eating a lot of foods that are rich in carbohydrates, more than likely, we will have issues with reaching our body composition goals. So we want to take a look at both, not just quantity of calories, but also quality of calories. So it is imperative that we make changes to our diet. And I know that's not what you guys want to hear. And I know I've been there a million times. Over the last 20 years, I've gone through quite the transformation myself. I went from being someone who drank 3-4 cans of soda a day. I was going through the drive-through at least once a day, guys. And I've gone from that to really making some small changes along the way. And I will tell you right now, this is never going to be something like a 30-day whatever, right? It's not about like a quick fix. These things do take time. And I will say, when I started managing my carbs probably around this time last year, I really started doing things like getting back into tracking my food and macro counting and really doing a lot of research on how our body starts to respond to carbohydrates, especially as we start to get older and especially as we start to become more susceptible to things like insulin resistance. So it's so important, ladies, to not only take a look at where you are with your caloric intake, but also to see how you're doing with the quality of your diet. Because I do promise you guys, this makes all the difference. Because even if you are in a calorie deficit, more than likely, yeah, you might see some weight loss, but the thing is that you might be losing lean mass, right? If you're not keeping your protein intake up. So that's why it's so important to have your macros dialed in. So I'm going to share with you, ladies, because I know this is not an easy thing to do, okay? I completely understand. Like I said, I used to be the biggest fast food junkie, and that's really why I'm in the health and wellness space now, because I struggled so much with cleaning up my diet. I had a hard time getting the carbs under control and whatnot. So that's exactly why I'm here, guys. And I want to share with you what has helped me and has also helped other clients. And you guys don't have to make these changes overnight. You guys can always just focus on one of the 5 that I'm about to share with you, and then work on making that a habit. And then over time, you guys can add on other things and start to get a little bit more strict as time goes on. But just know that you don't have to just cut the cord on carbohydrates right away. You can very well just make small changes, and you will see some small changes over time. So number 1, the first way that you can lower your carbohydrate intake, okay, is to switch from sugary drinks or sugar-free drinks to non-calorie, no sugar added type drinks, okay? So this can make a really big difference. And ladies, I know, guys, and a lot of you guys are going to fight me to the end on this, but guys, seriously, one of the best things you can do is just stop drinking soda. And I know that sounds really like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can do that, but guys, I promise you, you can. I have completely stopped soda and I do not miss it whatsoever. And I will say it was probably almost as hard as quitting smoking for me, but I can tell you right now that I have a drink of soda maybe every now and then, like I can't even really stomach it. It's so sweet. Guys, a Dr. Pepper, I believe, has 38 grams of sugar. So our intake that we want to stick to is 25 grams or less of sugar a day. So even just doing one soda a day, guys, is going to set us over that threshold. And that's not even including all of the other foods that we're eating, right? So if you guys have a soda habit, that's something that I very much would recommend that you start working on. I personally just went cold turkey, but I did have some symptoms for maybe a week or so, and I had a pretty heavy soda intake. But after that, guys, I promise you, like, in the weight loss was like, I lost like 10 pounds pretty quickly just from making that change. So that can just show over time how much those calories and that added sugar can really, really add up. And I will say diet soda isn't really much better. I mean, maybe a little bit, but at the same time, guys, you don't want to be putting that artificial stuff in your body. I know for me, like Splenda, Sweet and Low, Equal, all of those artificial sweeteners cause me all sorts of digestive issues. So guys, especially if you have digestive issues, I would highly recommend that, yeah, just stop it completely. That's really the best thing that you can do. All right, guys, so if you have any questions about that, let me know. So number 2, guys, you're going to start swapping out processed added sugar foods with foods that are naturally sweetened, okay? So doing things like going from like a commercial protein bar to making your own protein bar, doing things like swapping out sugary snacks for a piece of fruit. So some of you guys might argue with me like, well, isn't fruit have carbs in it? Yes, actually it does. But here's the thing, guys, I'm talking about making small changes. So if you're in a space right now where you're eating like candy in the middle of the day, that's one thing. Absolutely, guys. I would much rather see you guys eat a piece of whole fruit than like a sugary candy bar, okay? So yes, fruit does have carbs, but hey, the thing is, guys, I would rather you guys start to transition from a diet rich in processed foods to a diet that's rich in real foods, regardless of the carb content. But if you guys want to get a little technical, you can stick with lower sugar fruits such as strawberries, which are my go-to fruit, especially this time of year, guys. Strawberries are in season. They're just so good. They're so juicy. So that is the second way you can lower your carb intake. Number 3, all right, you're going to purge processed foods. But here's the thing, guys. What I want you to focus on here is not the foods that you're taking away. Because here's the thing, guys, it is probably a good idea, especially in the beginning, to try to get some foods out of your environment, especially if you find that you're overeating on them, you find yourself eating those processed foods every single day, and you almost even get angry when you can't have them. And also if you feel like it's triggering you to eat more of other processed foods. So maybe it's a trigger food for you to where it triggers more cravings. So guys, don't really focus too much on getting it out. What I want you to focus more on is adding some kind of wholesome food in. So one way I like to do this, I like to pick a vegetable each week and just kind of have fun with it. So 1 week for me, it was spaghetti squash. Spaghetti squash is really good. Not super low carb, but it is considered a low carb, maybe not keto. But we did all sorts of stuff with it. I just had it plain, roasted as a side. I also made a really good spaghetti squash type bake where I put some cheese and chicken and bacon on top. It was really, really good. So one thing you guys can do is pick a low carb vegetable or really any kind of whole food and look for recipes that have this whole food and really just have a lot of fun experimenting with some different recipes that include some kind of food from the earth, and you can mix this up every single week. So by adding stuff like that, guys, you're going to be able to crowd out those processed foods. And then what you can do is just get a little bit more aggressive with it as you go. So maybe you add 1 more serving of vegetables to your diet each day this week, and then next week you can add on another serving of vegetables and so on. And over time, you're basically going to start to crowd out those processed foods to where you're eating more whole foods. And I really do think that is key, because here's the thing, guys, if we're eating wholesome foods, so foods that are rich in water, protein, and fiber. If we're eating those types of foods, those foods are also going to help keep our hunger and our cravings under control. So that way you're not battling with a high carb intake in the first place. So I do think it's really important to make sure that we are getting plenty of fiber and also water-filled foods and protein-based foods. That can be a really big game changer for your carb cravings. So focusing on adding those wholesome foods in to crowd out those processed foods, okay? Number 4, you guys can try a strategy such as going gluten-free, grain-free, or going paleo. I'm a huge fan of the paleo diet. I don't always follow the paleo diet, but I do think it's a great way, guys, that you can improve the quality of the diet. You can also, if you have any digestive issues, the paleo diet is a really good way to restore your gut. It's a really good way to get those foods that could cause irritation to the gut. So foods such as dairy and gluten, getting those foods out of your diet and seeing if you feel better by getting those foods out of your diet is a really good way to restore the gut. But here's what I like about doing something like, and you don't have to do all 3, maybe you just pick one. So probably the easiest would be to go either grain-free or to go gluten-free. And what this is going to do, kind of like with the last strategy I shared with you, basically what that's going to do is going to shift you to where you're making more wholesome food choices. It's going to help you get those processed foods out. And the good thing is, guys, is that gluten can cause things like bloating in some people, including myself. So I'm not 100% gluten-free, but I will say usually I would say about 80 to 90% of the time I'm gluten-free, just depending on how strict with my diet I am. But I have noticed a lot less bloating, a lot better digestion by going mostly gluten-free. So guys, focusing on getting your carbohydrates from basically low starch fruits and vegetables is really key, guys. And that's really what you guys want to transition to ultimately, is to be able to follow a low carb diet. Because here's the thing, ladies, is that especially as we get older, we just don't process carbs the same way. And I will say, guys, is that from doing all this low carb diet, carb cycling, and also doing keto diet, I will say, guys, I don't need as many carbs as I used to think I did. And that is absolutely the truth. Because guys, it took me a week or 2 to adjust to the keto diet, but I will say, I don't really feel like my training really suffered hardly at all, if any. And it's just one of those things, you just really have to give it some time and let your body adjust. And the thing is that we also need to understand that we can't really be married to really any kind of dietary strategy, because everyone's going to be a little bit different, and we're all going to respond a little bit different. So what I want you guys to do is try one of these strategies, especially if you know that what you're doing isn't working. If you know that you're following a low calorie diet, you know you're in a calorie deficit, but you're not seeing the results. What you want to do is start implementing one of these strategies. And I actually have one more that I just thought of today. And I'm like, why didn't I post this the other day when I talked about this in a post the other day? I'm going to add one more. So we've talked about 4 things in order to get your carb intake a little bit lower, so that way you can experience better fat loss results. So we talked about swapping the sugary beverages out. So that is super game changing, ladies. If you are a soda drinker, work on getting that habit under control. I cannot stress that enough, okay? That's gonna give you a huge result. So if you're drinking a lot of soda now, even if you guys are drinking diet soda, you'll probably more than likely experience less bloating and better digestion and probably better body composition. We also talked about swapping processed foods and sweets for things like fruits. Yes, fruits have carbs in them, but I do think that is a great place to start. So if you're eating a lot of processed foods, guys, make sure that you do things like swap out the sweet stuff for naturally sweet foods. We also talked about adding some more whole foods in, focusing on adding rather than taking away to crowd out those processed foods. And we also talked about implementing some kind of strategy such as going gluten-free, grain-free, and or paleo. So paleo is grain-free, no linguines, dairy-free, gluten-free. Okay, so basically you're eating meat and let's see, meats and low starch vegetables. All right, guys, so one more thing you guys can do in order to lower your carb intake, and that is managing your mind, okay? Because a lot of times, ladies, whenever we're craving carbs, it's really because of what's going on in our head. So we get a release of dopamine whenever we have highly palatable foods. So highly palatable foods such as fried foods, foods rich in excess starch, sugar, and or fat. Our brains anticipate that release of dopamine from these highly palatable foods. And guys, the problem is that if you continue to give in to that craving, your brain is going to start to condition itself to reach for those foods in order to feel better, in order to relieve stress, in order to, sometimes you just, I just need something sweet after dinner, right? So over time, guys, what happens is you actually condition your brain to anticipate the reward of food, guys. Our brain sees food as a reward. And over time, what happens is that habit starts to be drawn out on autopilot. So we find ourselves reaching for food at the same time every day, maybe the same kind of foods. This is exactly why we have the habit of eating at night. This is why we have the habit of the 4 o'clock sugar surge when you're going to the candy drawer, right? You find yourself in these patterns of reaching for the same foods or foods that are highly palatable at the same times, or because of the same situation. So whether you had a fight with your spouse or maybe you had a shit day at work, right? A lot of times, guys, all we need to do is really get in tune with what am I thinking right now? What am I feeling right now? And what feeling am I trying to feel, or what feeling am I trying to get away from? So one thing that you guys can do in order to get your carb intake under control is to do some mind management work, okay? So making sure you're doing things like asking yourself before you reach for food, am I really hungry, or am I just feeling a certain way, or maybe I want to feel a certain way? Because a lot of times, ladies, we think that food makes us feel better. We think it takes the edge off, or it helps us relax, or it's my time, or it's my treat, right? But really what it is that we're just deepening the habit of processed foods, excess sugar in our diet. That is not doing us any favors when it comes to reaching our body composition goals. So one thing you guys can do is practice mindfulness. Ask yourself, am I hungry, or am I just wanting to eat in order to relieve my stress, to feel better, or whatever the case may be? Because a lot of times, ladies, those carb cravings are all in our heads, okay? Most of the time, that really is the case. All right, ladies, so I just wanted to come on here and share the 5 ways that you can start managing your carb intake in order to reach your body composition goals. I cannot stress this enough, ladies. It's not just about a calorie deficit. Quality of your nutrition does play a big role in the results that you get. All right, ladies, hey, message me if you have any questions, or put your question in the comments below. Hope this was helpful, and enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. All right, see you next time.